Welcome to our deep dive into one of the most heartbreaking and high-profile cases in recent history, the murder of Laci Peterson. This case shocked the nation not only because of the tragic loss of a young expectant mother, but also due to the chilling circumstances surrounding her disappearance and the subsequent investigation that followed. In today's video, we'll be taking you through the key events of this case, from Laci's sudden disappearance on Christmas Eve 2002 to the intense manhunt that ensued and ultimately the trial that gripped the world. We'll also explore the characters involved, including Laci's husband, Scott Peterson, whose actions and subsequent arrest turned this case into a media sensation. Our goal is to provide a comprehensive yet concise overview of this tragic story, while also shedding light on the key details that have kept people captivated for over 2 decades. Whether you're familiar with the case or hearing about it for the first time, we're here to guide you through every twist and turn. So sit back and join us as we unravel the events that led to one of the most infamous murder trials in American history. Let's begin. If you're new here or haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on any of our deep dives into the dark side of human nature. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps us keep bringing you the stories you love. Plus, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case, so be sure to drop a comment down below. Let's get into it. Before we dive into the details of the case, it's important to understand the people at the center of this tragedy. Laci and Scott Peterson. Laci Denise Rocha was born on May 4, 1975, in Modesto, California. She was known by her friends and family as a kind, outgoing, and loving person with a passion for gardening and a deep love for animals. Laci attended California Polytechnic State University, where she majored in ornamental horticulture, a field that perfectly matched her love of nature. It was during her time at college that Laci met Scott Peterson, the man who would later become her husband and, tragically, her killer. Scott Peterson was born on October 24, 1972, in San Diego, California. He grew up in a relatively affluent family and was described as charismatic and charming by those who knew him. Scott and Laci's relationship quickly blossomed, and they were married in 1997. The couple settled in Modesto, where they planned to start a family and build a life together. By the time Laci was 8 months pregnant with their first child, Connor, in late 2002, they appeared to have an idyllic life. Friends and neighbors often commented on how happy the couple seemed, and Laci was eagerly preparing for the arrival of her baby boy. However, beneath the surface, there were cracks in the marriage that would soon be exposed in the most horrific way. Scott had been living a double life. He was involved in an extramarital affair with a woman named Amber Frey, a fact that would later become a crucial element in the investigation. As we'll see, Scott's secret life and his interactions with Amber played a significant role in how this case unfolded. With this background in mind, let's move on to the day that would forever change the lives of everyone involved, the day Laci Peterson went missing. It was December 24, 2002, a day that began like any other for Laci Peterson. At 8 months pregnant, Laci was eagerly preparing for the upcoming holidays and the arrival of her baby boy, Connor. She had planned to walk the family dog, bake cookies, and visit her sister that day. But as the sun set on Christmas Eve, Laci was nowhere to be found. That morning, Scott Peterson claimed he last saw Laci at around 9:30 a.m. He said she was preparing to take their golden retriever, Mackenzie, for a walk in their neighborhood in Modesto, California. Scott then left the house to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina, about 90 miles away. He stated that when he returned home later that afternoon, Laci was gone, and the dog was found wandering the neighborhood with its leash still attached. Concern quickly grew when Laci's stepfather, Ron Gransky, called the Modesto Police Department that evening to report her missing. Family and friends immediately began searching the area, hoping to find any trace of Laci. The community was mobilized, with volunteers scouring the neighborhood and surrounding areas, but there was no sign of her. As the hours turned into days, the search for Laci intensified. The media quickly picked up the story, and what started as a local search soon became a national news event. Laci's smiling face was plastered on television screens across the country, with headlines describing the desperate search for the missing mother-to-be. But as the investigation progressed, attention began to shift to Scott Peterson. From the outset, there were things that didn't quite add up. Scott's demeanor raised eyebrows. He seemed detached, even cold, in the face of his wife's disappearance. While Laci's family was visibly distraught, Scott's behavior was described as odd and unemotional. The timeline he provided was also scrutinized. How could he have been so far away, fishing alone on Christmas Eve while his heavily pregnant wife stayed home? And why did he choose such a remote location that day? These questions, combined with Scott's unusual behavior, began to paint a troubling picture. Then came the first major revelation that would forever change the course of the investigation. Scott had been having an affair. A woman named Amber Frey came forward, revealing that she had been in a relationship with Scott, who had told her he was single. Amber, unaware of Scott's true marital status, was devastated when she learned of Laci's disappearance and immediately cooperated with the police. Amber's involvement was a turning point. She provided investigators with taped phone conversations she had with Scott after Laci went missing, in which he showed little concern for his missing wife. The contents of these tapes, coupled with Scott's behavior, began to solidify the growing suspicion that Scott Peterson might not be the distraught husband he appeared to be. As the investigation deepened, the focus shifted increasingly toward Scott, setting the stage for what would become one of the most scrutinized murder trials in American history. But before we get there, let's take a closer look at how the investigation unfolded and the crucial evidence that emerged. As the days passed without any sign of Laci Peterson, the Modesto Police Department intensified their investigation, turning their focus increasingly toward Scott Peterson. What began as a missing persons case quickly evolved into a full-scale criminal investigation, with Scott at the center of it. From the outset, investigators were struck by Scott's behavior. His lack of visible emotion and his seemingly casual attitude in the face of his wife's disappearance stood in stark contrast to the panic and grief expressed by Laci's family and friends. But it wasn't just his demeanor that raised red flags. It was also the inconsistencies in his story. Scott told police that he had gone fishing at the Berkeley Marina on the morning of December 24th, but investigators found his alibi suspicious. It was an unusual choice of activity for a man whose wife was 8 months pregnant and expecting their first child. Moreover, the location he chose, over 90 miles from their home, seemed odd, especially on Christmas Eve. These details prompted police to take a closer look at Scott's actions leading up to and following Laci's disappearance. Then came the bombshell that would dramatically shift the course of the investigation: the revelation of Scott's affair with Amber Frey. Amber, a massage therapist from Fresno, California, had been dating Scott for several weeks, completely unaware that he was married. According to Amber, Scott had told her he was a widower who had lost his wife, a lie that took on a chilling significance once Laci was reported missing. Amber, horrified by the news and feeling betrayed, immediately contacted the police and agreed to cooperate with the investigation. She provided detectives with detailed information about her relationship with Scott, including taped phone conversations that took place after Laci's disappearance. These recordings revealed a man who was shockingly indifferent to the plight of his missing wife. Scott spoke to Amber as if nothing were wrong, even attending a New Year's Eve party while his wife's whereabouts remained unknown. The content of these phone calls, along with Scott's initial lies to Amber about his marital status, painted a disturbing picture of a man who seemed more concerned with maintaining his double life than with finding his wife. This evidence became a crucial part of the case against him. As the investigation continued, police began to piece together more evidence that further implicated Scott. Searches of the Peterson home revealed a mop and bucket, which investigators believed could have been used to clean up a crime scene. They also found Laci's car keys, wallet, and sunglasses still at home, items she would likely have taken with her if she had left voluntarily. The forensic analysis of Scott's truck and the boat he used on the day of Laci's disappearance added to the growing body of evidence. While no direct evidence of foul play was found in the vehicle or the boat, the fact that Scott purchased the boat just weeks before Laci went missing raised more questions. Investigators theorized that Scott might have used the boat to dispose of Laci's body in the San Francisco Bay. Despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, the police knew they needed something more concrete to make an arrest. They continued to monitor Scott's movements closely, and their suspicions grew when he began acting even more erratically, including a suspicious trip toward the Mexican border that suggested he might be planning to flee. By early 2003, the investigation had shifted into high gear, with Scott Peterson becoming the prime suspect. As the police honed in on him, the case was about to take a dramatic turn with the discovery of crucial evidence that would change everything. But before we get to that, let's delve into how the public and media responded to this shocking case and how it influenced the investigation. As the investigation into Laci Peterson's disappearance continued, the search for her, and for answers, remained a top priority for both law enforcement and the public. Weeks turned into months, and despite exhaustive efforts, there was still no sign of Laci. But in April 2003, the case would take a devastating turn. On April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog along the shore of San Francisco Bay made a gruesome discovery. The decomposed remains of a small body, later identified as that of a male fetus, washed up on the shore near Richmond, California. The very next day, another body was found, this one badly decomposed and missing limbs. The second body was soon identified as that of Laci Peterson. The location where the bodies were found was chillingly significant. It was just a few miles from the Berkeley Marina, the very place where Scott Peterson had claimed to have been fishing on the day Laci disappeared. The discovery of Laci and her unborn son's remains in this area was a devastating blow to her family and marked a critical turning point in the case. Forensic analysis confirmed that the remains were indeed those of Laci Peterson and her unborn child, Connor. The condition of the bodies made it difficult to determine the exact cause of death, but the fact that they were found in the bay where Scott had been fishing was enough to solidify the investigators' suspicions. With this discovery, the police now had the physical evidence they needed to move forward. On April 18, 2003, just days after the bodies were found, Scott Peterson was arrested near La Jolla, California. At the time of his arrest, Scott was carrying nearly $15,000 in cash, multiple cell phones, camping gear, and his brother's driver's license. He had also drastically altered his appearance, dyeing his hair blonde and growing a beard. These details suggested that Scott might have been preparing to flee to Mexico, further incriminating him in the eyes of the authorities. The arrest of Scott Peterson marked the beginning of the next phase of this tragic case. The evidence was now overwhelmingly stacked against him, and the discovery of Laci and Connor's remains would be a key piece of the prosecution's case in the trial that was soon to follow. As we move into the next section, we'll explore how the trial unfolded, the arguments made by both the prosecution and the defense, and the ultimate verdict that would determine Scott Peterson's fate. The arrest of Scott Peterson in April 2003 set the stage for one of the most closely watched murder trials in American history. The trial began on June 1, 2004 in Redwood City, California, after a change of venue was granted due to the overwhelming media coverage in Modesto. The courtroom was packed with journalists, and the trial was broadcast on national television, drawing intense public interest. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Rick DiStasso, laid out a compelling case against Scott Peterson. Their narrative was straightforward yet chilling. Scott, they argued, had meticulously planned and executed the murder of his wife Laci in their home on the night of December 23rd or early on December 24th, 2002. According to the prosecution, Scott's motive was his desire to be free from the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood, particularly as he juggled his affair with Amber Frey. The prosecution pointed to Scott's numerous lies and deceitful behavior, including his denial of the affair with Amber Frey and his attempt to sell Laci's car and their home just days after her disappearance. They also presented the discovery of Laci and Connor's bodies near the Berkeley Marina as damning evidence, arguing that Scott had used his newly purchased boat to dispose of their bodies in the San Francisco Bay. One of the most powerful pieces of evidence presented by the prosecution was the series of recorded phone calls between Scott and Amber Frey. In these conversations, Scott is heard lying to Amber about his whereabouts and expressing little concern for Laci's well-being. These tapes, played for the jury, painted a picture of a man who was emotionally detached and seemingly more concerned with maintaining his affair than with finding his missing wife. The defense, led by attorney Mark Garagos, faced an uphill battle. Their strategy was to cast doubt on the prosecution's case by arguing that the evidence was purely circumstantial. Garagos contended that there was no direct evidence linking Scott to Laci's murder. No witnesses, no weapon, and no clear cause of death. He also suggested that Laci could have been abducted and murdered by someone else, possibly as part of a satanic cult, or by a group of burglars who had been active in the neighborhood at the time. The defense also tried to discredit the prosecution's theory about the boat, arguing that it would have been nearly impossible for Scott to dump Laci's body in the bay without being seen. They highlighted the lack of forensic evidence such as blood or hair in Scott's truck or boat, which they argued should have been present if he had committed the crime as alleged. However, the defense struggled to counter the overwhelming circumstantial evidence and the damaging impact of Scott's recorded phone calls with Amber Frey. The jury, composed of 6 men and 6 women, deliberated for nearly 2 weeks before reaching their verdict. On November 12, 2004, the jury found Scott Peterson guilty of first-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. The verdict was met with widespread relief from the public and Laci's family, who had long suspected Scott's involvement. In the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury recommended the death penalty, a decision that was upheld by the judge on March 16, 2005. Scott Peterson was sent to San Quentin State Prison, where he was placed on death row. But the story doesn't end there. In the years following his conviction, Scott Peterson continued to maintain his innocence, and his legal team filed multiple appeals, challenging both the verdict and the sentence. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned Scott's death sentence, citing issues with jury selection during the trial. However, his conviction for the murders was upheld. As we move into the final section, we'll explore the aftermath of the trial, Scott Peterson's ongoing legal battles, and the current status of this infamous case. The conviction and sentencing of Scott Peterson in 2005 marked the conclusion of one of the most high-profile murder trials in recent history. But even after the verdict was handed down, the case was far from over. In the years following his conviction, Scott Peterson became one of the most notorious inmates on California's death row at San Quentin State Prison. Despite his incarceration, he continued to maintain his innocence, insisting that he did not kill his wife Laci or their unborn son Connor. Scott's legal team, led by his appellate attorney, worked tirelessly to overturn the conviction, arguing that the trial was marred by media bias, prosecutorial misconduct, and flawed jury selection. In 2020, nearly 2 decades after Laci's disappearance, Scott Peterson's case took a significant turn. The California Supreme Court overturned his death sentence, ruling that the trial judge had made critical errors during jury selection. Specifically, the court found that potential jurors were improperly dismissed based on their personal views about the death penalty, which violated Scott's right to an impartial jury. However, it's important to note that while Scott's death sentence was overturned, his conviction for the murders of Laci and Connor was upheld. This meant that Scott remained in prison, but the question of his ultimate fate was once again up in the air. The court's decision led to a new round of legal proceedings as prosecutors weighed whether to seek the death penalty again in a new sentencing trial or to allow Scott to serve life in prison without the possibility of parole. As of now, Scott Peterson remains behind bars and the legal battles continue. In late 2021, a judge ordered a new hearing to examine claims of juror misconduct during the original trial. This development opened the door to the possibility that Scott's conviction could be overturned or that he could be granted a new trial altogether. However, such outcomes are far from guaranteed, and the case remains in a state of legal limbo. For Laci Peterson's family, the past 2 decades have been a long and painful journey. They have endured the media frenzy, the trial, and the seemingly endless appeals, all while mourning the loss of a beloved daughter and sister. The possibility of a new trial or sentencing brings with it the prospect of reopening old wounds, but they remain steadfast in their belief that justice was served with Scott's conviction. As this case continues to unfold, It serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of the legal system and the enduring impact of violent crime on the families left behind. While the final chapter of the Scott Peterson case has yet to be written, its legacy as one of America's most infamous true crime stories is firmly cemented. Thank you for joining us as we explored the tragic case of Laci Peterson and the legal saga that followed. If you found this video informative, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest true crime content. The Laci Peterson case is one that has captured the attention of millions, not just because of the tragic loss of a young mother and her unborn child, but also because of the shocking betrayal by the person closest to her. It's a story that continues to resonate, reminding us of the dark complexities that can exist behind closed doors. Over the course of this video, we've explored the key events that led to Laci's disappearance, the intense investigation that followed, the trial that captivated the nation, and the ongoing legal battles that have kept this case in the public eye. Through it all, the memory of Laci and her son Connor remains at the heart of this story, a heartbreaking reminder of the lives cut short by a senseless act of violence. As we reflect on this case, it's important to remember the impact it has had on the families involved, the community of Modesto, and the broader public. The Peterson case has not only highlighted the challenges of achieving justice in the legal system, but has also sparked conversations about the nature of media coverage, the public's role in high-profile cases, and the enduring quest for truth. While the legal journey may continue for Scott Peterson, the memory of Laci Peterson is one that will never fade. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of love, community, and the tireless pursuit of justice. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of America's most infamous true crime cases. We hope this video has provided you with a deeper understanding of the events and individuals involved. If you found this content insightful, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on our future true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and take care.